The 2026 Senate elections are right around the corner, and in today's video, we're going to fill out this map based on the latest polls in every race. Republicans are looking to defend their 53-seat majority, which they won in 2024 by flipping seats in Montana, Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. They are widely expected to hold on to that majority, considering the 2026 map once again favors the GOP. But with Trump's approval rating slipping, Democrats will like their chances to pick up a seat or two come November. There are 35 seats up for election. We'll start out west and work our way up to the northeast. There isn't a whole lot going on here yet. Not many competitive races, and we don't yet have polling out of most of these states. So for now, we'll rely on the consensus ratings from various election forecasters. Starting in Oregon, everyone has it pegged as solidly Democratic for incumbent Senator Jeff Merkley, who was reelected with about 57% of the vote back in 2020. So Oregon goes solid blue on the map. The same goes for Colorado, where Democrat John Hickenlooper, who has already said this will be his final term, is also heavily favored. Colorado has notably shifted further to the left since Trump's first election in 2016. As for Republicans, Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming all fall into the solid Republican category, as you'd expect, given their strong GOP lean and the fact that each state's Republican incumbent is seeking re-election. New Mexico is the lone competitive race here in the western half of the continental United States, and even calling it competitive is a stretch. All but one major forecaster has it rated as solidly Democratic. New Mexico's partisan lean is D+4, meaning that in a neutral political environment, a Democrat would be expected to win by about 8 points. In this case, Ben Ray Lujan's relatively modest profile should work to his advantage, as it would take a really poor Democratic candidate to lose this seat, especially in what should be a good national environment for the party. We'll mark New Mexico down as solidly blue, given that 3 of 4 major forecasters rate it that way. Down in Alaska, we once again haven't seen any polling, and again, 3 of 4 forecasters rate it as solidly Republican, with only race to the White House breaking the trend, rating it as just tilt Republican. The fact that former Congresswoman Mary Peltola is now expected to run for governor and not challenge for the Senate gives incumbent Dan Sullivan a much clearer path to re-election. Still, given that race to the White House sees it as merely a tilt, we'll place Alaska down as likely Republican for now. Now moving down through the Great Plains states, South Dakota and Oklahoma are both solidly Republican. Again, no polling here yet, which isn't surprising considering incumbents Markwayne Mullin and Mike Rounds were both re-elected with more than 60% of the vote in their previous campaigns. Nebraska and Kansas, though, are a bit more interesting. We actually have our first poll out of Nebraska from Democrat-aligned Pollster Change Research released earlier this month. It shows incumbent Republican Pete Ricketts leading independent Dan Osborne by just 1 point. 46% to 45%. You might remember Osborne from last cycle, where he came within 7 points of unseating established Senator Deb Fischer. Osborne proved to be a fundraising machine, effectively positioning himself as not a Trump Republican, but also not a Democrat, allowing him to win over plenty of independents, soft Republicans, and Democrats alike. Meanwhile, Ricketts isn't particularly popular even within his own party. So, if Osborne mounts another challenge, we could be looking at a truly competitive race, especially given that 2026 is shaping up to be a more favorable cycle for Democrats than 2024. Right now, 3 of 4 forecasters have Nebraska rated as solid Republican, with race to the White House again breaking from the pack, rating it as just likely Republican. Still, the overall consensus leans towards solid. In Kansas, Roger Marshall is now heavily favored to win, especially with outgoing Democratic Governor Laura Kelly declining to run. There's no polling out of Kansas yet, and once again, all but one forecaster has it rated as solid Republican. That brings us to Texas, where things are considerably more complicated. Attorney General Ken Paxton has officially mounted a primary challenge against incumbent Senator John Cornyn, setting up a major clash between the Texas Republican Party's establishment wing and its hardline conservative faction. Cornyn and Paxton have clashed for years, with Paxton criticizing Cornyn for being insufficiently conservative, while Cornyn has openly highlighted Paxton's legal troubles, including his 2023 impeachment by the Republican-controlled Texas House. He was later acquitted by the Senate. President Trump has yet to endorse either candidate, and it's unclear whether he will. If he does, whoever receives his backing would likely become the primary favorite. If Trump stays out, we're probably headed for one of the most competitive Senate primaries in recent memory. Paxton has led every poll conducted so far, and by double digits in 3 of the 4 surveys. But Cornyn holds incumbency advantages, boasts endorsements from several prominent U.S. senators, and has amassed a substantial war chest. Right now, the prediction market Kalshi rates it as effectively a toss-up, with Paxton sitting at 48% odds and Cornyn at 47%. This primary could have significant implications for the general election. If Cornyn prevails, he'd likely secure re-election by double digits. But if Paxton is the nominee, the race could tighten, especially if Colin Allred or Beto O'Rourke jumps in on the Democratic side. Even though Texas shifted significantly to the right between the 2020 and 2024 presidential elections, with Trump winning by 14 points, it's worth remembering that each of the last 3 Senate contests in Texas were decided by single-digit margins. Right now, 2 forecasters have Texas rated as solid Republican, one as likely Republican, and one as lean Republican. Without a general election poll yet, we'll mark Texas down as likely Republican for now based on those combined ratings. So with those predictions locked in, Republicans lead with 40 seats and Democrats hold 37, with 23 states still to go. Let's head south now. It's another region without much to watch. And then we'll close things out with the Midwest and Northeast, where there's more action. Republicans should comfortably hold Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. They have incumbents running for re-election in each of these states, and all 5 are solidly Republican at the federal level, each having backed Donald Trump by more than 20 points this past November. Each state also holds a consensus solid Republican rating across major forecasters. Now, South Carolina and Florida sit right on the edge between likely and safe Republican. Both states have Republican incumbents running again, but there are a few small caveats. In South Carolina, it's Lindsey Graham, who has shown some vulnerability in past races. While he's seeking a 5th term, he's only exceeded 55% of the vote once in his previous 4 elections. He should still win, but he remains one of the least popular senators in the country, and there's a chance he could face a noteworthy primary challenge. South Carolina also isn't quite as deeply Republican as its southern neighbors, but even so, 3 of 4 major forecasters have it rated as solid Republican, so we'll place it in the solid column on our map as well. Florida is a similar story. Senator Ashley Moody, appointed by Ron DeSantis, is seeking election for the first time. Moody has been a historic overperformer statewide, winning her attorney general race in 2022 with over 60% of the vote. 3 forecasters have Florida as solid Republican, while Race to the White House rates it as lean Republican, so we'll mark Florida down as likely Republican for now. That leaves North Carolina and Georgia, 2 of the most high-profile Senate races to watch this cycle. In North Carolina, Republican Thom Tillis is expected to seek a 3rd term, although he may face a primary challenge. The state's Republican Party officially censured Tillis over his bipartisan support for gun control and same-sex marriage, and former RNC co-chair Lara Trump has been floated as a potential challenger. On the Democratic side, outgoing Governor Roy Cooper is widely expected to enter the race, which would be a best-case scenario for Democrats. Cooper maintains strong approval ratings throughout his 2 terms, enjoys built-in name recognition, and has a well-established fundraising network. If it's Tillis versus Cooper, expect an extremely close race, and that's reflected in the polling. Cooper has led in all 4 public polls released so far, but by tight margins, ranging from +1 to +4. Looking specifically at the 3 most recent polls conducted in March and April, Cooper leads by 2, 3, and 4 points, good enough for a lean Democratic rating for North Carolina on our map. Then down in Georgia, Republicans have their own version of Roy Cooper, outgoing Governor Brian Kemp, who is also expected to run for Senate. He's arguably an even stronger candidate than Cooper, considering his electoral track record and consistently high approval ratings. That makes Democratic incumbent Jon Ossoff, in my opinion, the most vulnerable senator facing re-election in 2026. Ossoff is a proven fundraiser and won't go down easily, and that's reflected in the forecasters' ratings, where 3 out of 4 have the race listed as a pure toss-up, and 1 gives him a slight edge. But if you just look at the polling, you see how strong a challenger Kemp would be. Ossoff consistently leads every other potential Republican opponent, but trails Kemp in all 3 hypothetical head-to-head polls, including one survey showing Kemp ahead by as much as 7 points. Granted, all 3 polls were fielded by Republican-aligned pollsters, but the trend lines match my own priors, giving Kemp a slight advantage if he jumps into the race. So based on the ratings and available polling, Georgia goes down as lean Republican on our map, meaning that while Democrats flip North Carolina, Republicans flip Georgia. All right, moving up the coastline to Virginia. No polls here yet, and all 4 major forecasters have it rated as solid Democratic for incumbent Senator Mark Warner, who was reelected with 56% of the vote back in 2020. The only thing that could make this race competitive is if outgoing Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin jumps into the field, but at this point, that isn't expected to happen. Over in West Virginia and Kentucky, both seats are consensus solid Republican holds. Mitch McConnell is retiring in Kentucky, but it remains one of the most Republican states in the country. Whether it's Congressman Andy Barr or former Attorney General Daniel Cameron as the GOP nominee, either candidate should easily cruise to victory. Somewhat similar story in Illinois, where incumbent Democrat Dick Durbin just announced he will not seek re-election. Illinois isn't quite as deeply Democratic as Kentucky is Republican, but the state hasn't elected a Republican to a statewide federal office since 1988. Given how long Republicans have been out of power here in the absence of a strong challenger on their side, Illinois stays in the solid Democratic column, matching the rating from 3 of 4 forecasters. In Iowa, Republican incumbent Joni Ernst is on track to face her easiest re-election yet. 3 of 4 major forecasters currently rate the race as solid Republican. Her last 2 elections were decided by less than 8 points, but since she was first elected in 2014, Iowa has only moved further right. Donald Trump expanded his margin to 13 points here in 2024, and Democrats simply don't have a big-name challenger to take on Ernst. It's a similar story, but in reverse, up in Minnesota. Incumbent Democrat Tina Smith is retiring, setting up the first open Senate race in Minnesota since 2006. Republicans haven't won a federal election here since 2002, but Minnesota is consistently competitive, often decided by single-digit margins. Democrats, however, have a deep bench in the state. Both Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan and Congresswoman Angie Craig have declared their intention to run, with several more potential candidates still in the mix. Flanagan is clearly favored over Ogle when it comes to endorsements, fundraising, and the lone poll conducted so far. On the Republican side, the frontrunner is former NBA player Royce White, but he just lost last year's Senate race against Amy Klobuchar by nearly 16 points. Don't read too much into the battleground rating by Inside Elections. They've only used solid or battleground labels so far this cycle. The lean Democratic rating from the 3 other major forecasters is far more accurate, and that's what we'll go with here on our map. Now over to Michigan, where we have yet another open race following the retirement of Democrat Gary Peters. This one poses more of a challenge for Democrats, especially after Trump carried Michigan this past November by about 1 point. Both parties have had success in Michigan recently, but Democrats have been stronger outside of presidential races. They currently hold both U.S. Senate seats, all statewide executive offices, and control the state Senate. Republicans haven't won a Senate race here since 1994, but this is probably their best opportunity since then. With 2020 presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg and outgoing Governor Gretchen Whitmer both declining to run, Democrats are without a clear big-name candidate. Right now, Congresswoman Haley Stevens is the front-runner among declared candidates, although Attorney General Dana Nessel would likely take over that spot if she decides to run. On the Republican side, former Congressman Mike Rogers is expected to be the nominee. He ran a strong campaign in 2024, coming within 0.3 of a point of defeating Alyssa Slotkin in another open seat battle. As long as Republicans don't blow it by nominating someone like Tudor Dixon, they'll have at least a 50-50 shot here. The only head-to-head poll so far is from Target Insight in early March, showing Rogers leading Stevens by 6 points. Another poll from Mitchell Research in mid-March shows Rogers trailing Dana Nessel by 1 point. Given there's a real chance Nessel enters, I'm going to split the difference between those two polls and put Michigan in the tilt Republican column on our map. Alrighty, now wrapping things up here in the Midwest with Ohio, where we're looking at a special election to fill the remainder of the Senate term vacated by Vice President J.D. Vance. Republican Governor Mike DeWine appointed Lieutenant Governor John Husted to replace Vance, and Husted is running as an unelected incumbent. On the Democratic side, former Congressman Tim Ryan has expressed interest in running. He previously lost to Vance in the 2022 Senate race. There's also speculation that newly ousted Senator Sherrod Brown could attempt a comeback after losing his fourth-term bid to Republican Bernie Moreno by about 3.5 points. According to the latest prediction market odds, Brown and Ryan each have about a 40% chance of securing the Democratic nomination. As for polling, we only have one so far, conducted by Bowling Green University in partnership with YouGov. It shows Husted leading both Democrats by 6 points over Brown and 8 points over Ryan. It's just one poll, but those are strong numbers for Husted and enough for me to place Ohio in the likely Republican column on our map. With that, Republicans are already projected to match their current seat total of 53, while Democrats trail far behind at just 41. They do have several safe seats remaining up in the Northeast, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, and Delaware. We don't have polling in any of these states yet, but every major forecaster has them rated solid Democratic. The only race with even a hint of competitiveness is New Jersey, which swung hard to the right in 2024, with Trump coming within 6 points of beating Kamala Harris. But incumbent Democrat Cory Booker remains quite popular and has won each of his 3 previous Senate races by double digits, so this stays solid Democratic for now. That leaves us with New Hampshire and Maine, both of which are shaping up to be very interesting. In New Hampshire, Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen is retiring, and Congressman Chris Pappas is the first to enter the race to succeed her. He's likely to remain the most prominent Democrat in the field. Unfortunately for Republicans, former Governor Chris Sununu has decided not to run. He would have been the party's strongest contender by far. Instead, it looks like former Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown will likely win the Republican nomination. He's a strong candidate in his own right and should give Pappas a real challenge. But in the absence of any polling, we'll defer to the experts. 3 of 4 forecasters have the contest leaning or tilting Democratic. And given that Republicans haven't won a federal race here in over 15 years, that's what we'll go with on our map. And finally, to Maine, where incumbent Republican Susan Collins continues to be a political unicorn. Back in 2020, nearly every poll and analyst predicted her defeat, yet Collins defied expectations and beat Democrat Sarah Gideon by 8 points, and she did it on the same ballot Joe Biden carried Maine by 9 points. She remains the only Republican to win a Senate race in a state carried by the Democratic presidential nominee since 2004. Now, in 2026, Maine is the only Republican-held Senate seat in a state Kamala Harris won, and it's widely considered Democrats' best pickup opportunity. Their strongest potential challenger is Congressman Jared Golden, who's consistently won re-election in Maine's more conservative 2nd District, a district Trump has carried 3 times. He reportedly told Axios recently that he's exploring a run for statewide office. This is one of those races where the candidate makes all the difference. If Golden jumps in and secures the nomination, Collins could be in serious trouble. But if he doesn't, there's a good chance she scrapes by again. In the absence of any new polling, we'll again lean on the experts. 2 forecasters have Maine as a toss-up, and 2 have it as lean Republican, so we'll split the difference and place Maine in the tilt Republican column. That means, based on the latest polling and projections, Republicans are on track to actually expand their Senate majority to 54 seats, while Democrats would sit at 46. Obviously, this is an extremely early snapshot in time. and we don't yet have substantive polling in many of these key races. So things are sure to shift over the next year. As always, feel free to share your thoughts on this map in the comments and let me know what other videos or topics you'd like to see me cover next. That's it for today's video. Shout out to my channel members listed in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the content. Check out more of my videos here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.